This is episode 16, Tom's MRI meltdown, how Tom's MRI results caused a meltdown.
Tom got MRI results?
Yeah.
He did.
What did you get? What did you get done?
Well, first off, let's set the scene. Where were we?
It was a crisp November morning.
It was a crisp November morning.
It was 16 years ago.
So yeah, last November I woke up with really super bad leg pain again, which I hadn't had for years and years and years.
Oh, yeah.
And it was like, what's going on? Couldn't turn over in bed. It was absolutely, it was agony. Like you can't move. Like I couldn't engage my abs to turn. I had to use my arms to try and lift my body up, and it was just horrible.
Which is what you were like back in the day.
Yeah, back when it first happened. Yeah.
This is the first time I'd seen you that way because you'd obviously. But
Shall we just wait? Let's add a bit of context. Back when what happened?
Oh, years ago when I first injured my back. So I have years ago it happened. So 8 years ago, maybe now, 9 years maybe. I got an MRI scan and it was an L4, L5 protrusion and an L5, S1 extrusion with impingement on the nerve root.
Yes.
So I had really bad sciatica down one leg. My glute leg was burning, couldn't stand up straight, couldn't walk. So that set me on the path of fixing myself over a year, which is where we're kind of at now when we started helping other people and having programs and stuff. And that's what we do. Sure. So this is now 8 years later, 9 years later, however long later. And I'm like in the most amount of pain I've had for a very long time. And I was able to try and do stuff in the morning to kind of fix it and get myself standing and being able to limp. Couldn't even walk yet. So yeah, you see me, JP, one morning. I couldn't bear weight on that leg at all.
Yep.
And like that was after doing a bunch of stuff to get me to that point. Like it
so
was
crazy,
really bad. So yeah, that was me. Like I know how to fix this. I know what's going on. I've had this before. I'm able to get myself a wee bit better. Yep. But we talk about that good pain and bad pain.
Totally.
And a bad pain is a pain that doesn't change. It stays exactly the same even if you move.
Yes.
And it was tipping into that. And I was like, I can't lean in this certain way or it is so painful that I'm going to be sick. Yeah. So I was like, is this actually my hip here? Is something wrong with my hip? Because I have always wondered over the years, because I haven't been able to feel my left glute properly for years, is that going to affect my left hip? Is it going to affect the joint in a way? If the muscles aren't working properly, it might do. So that was what was running through my head. And that was the first cycle of like, okay, it must be my hip now. I'm supposed to help people out of pain and I'm in immense pain right now. What am I going to do here? Like, I need to get this seen to. So,
and there's layers to that as well, because it's not just, I'm supposed to be able to set an example here and do the things, but what if everything that I thought I knew is now actually completely wrong?
Yeah. That was in my head. Am I a phony?
Yeah.
am I not doing anything right at all?
All these people we helped the last 9 years, it was was a fluke.
No.
Absolutely nothing.
Those 50,000. No.
Yep. No idea what I'm doing.
No.
So it was the first time I'd actually went back to see my physio for years. Hadn't seen him. Really missed him, like, because he's a cool guy. He's good to chat to. But went back to see him and says, look, I need to get an MRI scan here because this hip's really bad. Like, I haven't had this pain for such a long time.
Sure.
So I thought, while I was at it, I'm going to get my back done again.
Why not?
Totally.
See what's happened over the years.
Sure.
And I thought, you know what? I bet something happened to my shoulder years ago because I injured it really badly and it wouldn't move right.
Yeah.
I had a wing scapula and everything and had so many problems. And I also fell on my neck a lot. So when I was trying to learn backflips, I fell on my neck every time.
Oh.
When I was trying to do handstand walks, I fell on my face every time.
Cool.
So yeah, there was a bunch of instances where I cracked my neck really badly and I thought, there's bound to be something going on there.
This explains so much, Tom.
It really does, doesn't it? Yeah. What was most impressive is he'd just get back up again and go, okay,
let's go.
Let's just do it again.
So that scene from the IT crowd.
It's like, your 20s. Anytime you hurt yourself bad, you're just walking off.
Bounced, yeah.
So, yeah, went to get the MRI scans and got the results of them. And, yeah, I have them here.
Okay.
So the first thing that I was interested in was my hip because I thought the head of my femur must have snapped or something because it was ridiculously painful.
Yeah. Or hip cancer.
Hip cancer.
Because you Google it and that's obviously the first thing that pops up.
Yeah.
Totally. My hip is sore, you're going to die.
Which is actually a good point. I don't know whether to bring it in before or after because the first thing you do is that you got a scan. Not everyone will get a scan.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So what is the first thing you do is you Google it. And then what happens? Yeah, you've got arthritis.
Only good things.
You've got bone on bone. You've got degenerative diseases. All these things. Hip cancer, of course. And that is often as far as people go. And I don't know whether it's good to do that. I mean, but you can't not. You can't not.
You want to
Google
know
it.
something.
You have to.
And even the wrong knowledge feels like better knowledge than no knowledge.
It does, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a
Just not
tricky
And
case
the
one.
problem is that just the lists of symptoms that it puts
I
underneath it, you're
know.
able to go, I have
Yeah.
that,
Yeah.
I have that, I have
Even,
that.
even if there's 25 symptoms and you have 3 of them, you're like,
Well,
I have
That's
3
all
of them.
25.
Good. Nailed it. Yeah.
one symptom is, do you have a leg? Oh my god!
I knew it. I'm gonna die.
But yes, I mean, then, because we would often recommend to people, because we get many people saying, I think I have, my physio thinks I have,
Yeah.
and we always recommend to get an MRI.
Yep.
But then this happened to Tom, and it initially was not better though, was it?
No.
So what did your hip actually say?
My hip is... Hang on, I have to scroll. I have to actually scroll to get...
Yeah.
So early degenerative cleft in the pubic symphysis cartilage. So inside of the leg, there's a bit of degeneration going on. Mild synoviitis of the left hip joint. There's a possible small labral tear in the right hip, not the left one, in the right one.
Good.
The pain was in the left side.
Yep. Good. That's what you want, really.
Yeah.
More issues. Yeah.
I don't know the thing.
Degenerative change within the left labrum. Possible tearing. Lateral aspect of the left labrum appears blunted. Maybe a little new bone formation at the femoral heads and the femoral necks.
I hate having a blunt hip.
Yeah.
Two bones.
A significant oedema seen within the posterior aspect of the left iliac bone at the level of the SI joint. There's no significant joint effusion within the left SI joint or signal change across the joint. There's evidence of fatty scarring.
Not just normal scarring.
Tom.
Jeez, they're
Big chunky scars.
cruel, aren't they?
On the iliac side of the right SI joint, there's possible early herniation of fat into the right inguinal canal.
You know?
And there's no herniation of a viscus. So, yeah, nothing bad.
So, yeah, reading all that out, imagine you didn't know what we knew. You'd be like, oh no, oh no,
Yeah.
oh no, degeneration, edema, all
Yeah.
these things. You're like, what does that mean?
Any medical term
Yeah.
sounds bad if you
Yes.
don't know that it's just like
A description.
a marker of it's the lateral side of something. It's the outside of whatever it is. And all the joints have these like 4-part words, and it's just
Yeah.
different. And most of it is fine.
Yeah.
Even things like potential labral tear, you would change that to, I've got a labral tear.
Yeah. It's as good as it got. Yeah.
And many times you don't get good follow-up, depending on how you get your MRI as well. Like, you didn't get any follow-up because
No,
you went
the
private.
privately.
Yeah, so you literally had the MRI, here's the results, bye. So that can be very scary. But yeah, actually knowing what we know, that's probably normal hip. Most people would have an MRI in their hip.
And anyone that gets an MRI is like, there's a little bit of a bone growth here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, oh yeah.
It doesn't mean
yeah.
it's a cause of pain.
No.
And like this morning, we were doing legs. I
Yeah.
was moving my hips completely fine. I've no nips, no pain whatsoever in my hips. They feel fine again.
Yeah.
It was just that period I had of a really intense flare up. So the interesting thing for me was that I said I also got my spine done again to see if it had
Classic.
changed over
Yep.
the
Yeah,
years. So
may as well.
Here we go.
originally I had 2 discs that were, so I had a protrusion and an extrusion.
Yep.
So an extrusion is one of the ones that is a bit more prone to flaring up on people because
Sure.
it's poking out that wee bit more. So you can get more nerve irritation off that. So now my lumbar spine reads that there is degeneration of 4 lower discs.
Inflation.
Inflation.
Killer.
It is, absolutely. So
50% inflation, jeez.
there is mild flattening of lumbar lordosis. One thing that I found quite interesting, though, years ago when I got my first MRI scan, I was lying flat on the table, which changes the orientation of your pelvis and how your kind of the curve in your spine will be.
Yeah.
This time, because I was in pain, I said to the guy, look, if I lie down here for 5 minutes, I'm not going to be able to move again. And I had to lie there for the 30 minutes for the thing. So like getting back up again was really bad at that point.
Yeah.
So he lifted my legs up onto something, put a pillow underneath them. So I was in a posterior tilt.
So of course that flattened out your lumbar spine.
Yeah.
Which is what that that line means is that your lumbar spine is
Less
quite
curved.
flat,
Yeah.
less curved.
So that's something to look out for as well.
But the guy reading the MRI wouldn't have known
Mhm.
that that's how you were put into position. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's interesting.
Because the
that.
radiologist isn't there at the
No,
time.
yeah,
They don't see it till
Not
later.
to tangent too much.
Okay.
But
I like a good time.
if you're measuring something, you have to keep parameters the same.
Yeah.
You can't just.
But it was
willy-nilly,
you know, Tom
yeah.
was in. There's literally no way he could have kept it the same. But it's just interesting to note that line on the MRI report, which is one thing that you're like, oh no, I'm flattened. I've got my flattened lumbar spine, is literally redundant, and yet it's in the report anyway because it has to be. It's a medical report.
More noise
Yeah.
to look at as well.
Yeah, they just write down what do they see, which is exactly what you need, but without that filter of someone who knows the situation or much more medical knowledge than most people, including ourselves, have. You're just like, oh no, another thing.
Yeah, just any voice of rational kind of explanation in there would be good.
I also wonder as well, like, you know, when you shimmy yourself, like we did at the start of the thing, you know, because you're doing a podcast and you need to sit up straight, you know, so, but it's like, if you shimmy yourself onto the table in one way, one of your hips might be higher than the other one.
Yeah.
Your spine's going to be twisted and it's going to say, oh, there's loss of space on the right-hand side, but it's like,
Or
you
yeah,
shimmied yourself up the table in a way.
I don't know anything about this. What if you're a footballer,
'Kay.
right? You played in a match the night before, you did a lot of kicking on one leg. It's probably going to sit a little bit differently than the other one. So surely that would, as you say, like adjust it.
I should have said as soon as I got to the place, like, hang on, I need to do SMM first to make sure
Yeah.
I'm straight.
Yeah.
So where were we? We were
We did
mild
one
flattening
line.
of the lumbar lordosis.
Yes.
Yep.
So yeah, and on next there is a focus of type 1 end plate change involving the anterior superior margin of L2 consistent with the
Wow.
romanus lesion and also at the superior end plate of L1 more centrally. So basically bony bits and like stuff is worn down and grown back again. And it gets that cool name, a romanus lesion.
I studied human biology at uni, and words like this were normal. But even now, you started that, and my head went.
Totally. It's not day-to-day words. You're not used to these big words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There is an enthesial new bone formation at the T12L1 annulus anteriorly towards the front. There is a little type 1 end plate change posteriorly at L4L5, so a little bit down lower. There's a focus of type 2 end plate change involving an anterior inferior margin of the L3, likely representing a burnt out romanus lesion.
Yeah,
That's the burnt out.
Sick medical
Good.
term.
Yeah,
Sick medical term.
Medical term, bro.
Now we're into the bulges. So
Yeah.
at L2, L3, so it's in between those two vertebrae, the disc, there's a mild bulging of annulus without central nerve impingement. So that's kind of like, if you're going to have a disc bulge, that's the winner. You want to have one like that. Mild, no problem. L3, L4, there's bulging of the annulus effacing the anterior epidural fat, and there's a broad-based left posterior lateral anophomoral. These are such hard words to
They
say together.
are, yeah.
Protrusion that likely impinges on the left L3 nerve root. So that's an actual nerve impingement going on. At L4, L5, this was the one that was originally the protrusion. There's a broad-based bulging of the disc effacing the anterior epidural fat without central nerve root impingement.
Happening again.
And
Just
there's
zone out.
a
Yeah.
small central annular tear as
Yes.
well. So that's slightly better than it used to be.
Oh, there you go.
And then there's a broad-based left posterior. There's another protrusion likely
Sure,
impinging the
sure.
L4 nerve root. There's just a big long list of different words there.
Yeah.
At L5S1, there's a moderate-sized broad-based central protrusion. So instead of being red as an extrusion now, so Jenny will have a good point on this actually as well. That
Pressure's on.
effaces the anterior epidural fat, causing mild effacement of the anterior thecal CSF. Now we're getting letters. Barely
Jeez.
abutting the left S1 nerve root, and at worst, irritating it.
At worst.
At worst,
But
irritating
at
it.
best, not.
So that's the one that originally, all those years ago, was the extrusion that was impinging on the nerve root. Now it's saying, at worst, irritating it. So the two I had originally have got slightly better, but now it's like kind of like spread out a bit. So the two above it have taken the brunt.
Yeah.
And that's one of the issues that happens to people as well that would get like a fusion. Everything above and below that fusion is going to start to have to work harder or move in a certain way.
Totally.
So that's just how things can go over time. But yeah, Interestingly, Jenny had a point whenever I said about that not being an extrusion anymore.
No, so I'm just going to quickly give a visual to the camera if you're watching the video version of this podcast of what epidural fat is and what way the discs were bulging. So hello, video people. So this is the spine. We'll go this way. This is spine. This is your tummy facing forwards. My palm is the tummy. The back of my hand is the back of you. So basically, the discs are meant to be in line with the spine, and it's popping backwards. The epidural fat is at your back. You may have heard of epidurals for pregnancy. They get injections right into that between the vertebrae and the spine.
That's comfortable.
Yeah, no.
Nice thick needle for
So
that.
it's just basically, instead of Tom's disc being in line with the spine, it's just gone boop, pointing out the back. Cool. But yes. What?
Yeah. I was going to say, I particularly enjoy how they describe the negative, so at worst it's whatever, which makes me think of, would you like a cup of tea? Wouldn't say no, just say yes then. Like, there's a positive way to say things, and then there's a
negative.
Yeah.
Yeah, but again, it's just observations.
Yeah.
Like, it's heartless, it's emotionless. This is what I see. And
which is exactly how people take it.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's weird because that's what you want. You don't want your doctor going, oh no.
Yeah.
You just want them to state
Oh, you did.
Yeah. You want them to state the facts in a professional way. It's just when you read it.
Yep.
Anyway, my really good point that I'm making is when we were researching a blog a while ago about MRI, your original MRI reports, and we were talking about how MRI reports aren't the be all and end all, because they're quite subjective.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, these radiologists and whoever else specialists that look at it, it is them looking through a load of pictures. And things can be missed, things can be misinterpreted, things can be, in someone's experience, that's a mild, because I've seen much, much worse.
Sure.
There are, of course, parameters, but, you've got the doctor's experience coming into it as well. So they actually did a study where they did something like 40 MRIs and got different doctors to read them and give a diagnosis of them. And there were diagnoses that varied from the same person had an extrusion versus just a protrusion, which is like protrusion is less bad, extrusion is more bad. Mm.
And this is based off the same image.
It's the same image that they've seen. So it's interesting that potentially Tom's discs have healed. You've seen that, like we have seen that people we work with have had improvements, visible improvements, that anyone could see. Or it could be that it was right on the edge of that protrusion-extrusion boundary, and one doctor has decided this is an extrusion, but then the later doctor has decided actually this is a protrusion. So it's really, really subjective MRIs as well, and that's one of the reasons why you shouldn't let an MRI result rule your life, because there is still quite a lot of wiggle room, even in the results that you get. Yeah.
Plus, again, I was sitting with my pelvis posterior tilted.
Yeah.
So
what did that do to your disc?
Yeah. Maybe if I'm standing up straight, it does poke out a bit more again.
Totally.
And when I have that pelvis in that position, it goes back in a little bit again. So it's not ever sitting in one place. So, yeah. So that was the lumbar spine. Nice. Once I knew that, I was like, it's just nerve irritation. Almost immediately, my hip started to feel better because I knew what it was again.
Yeah.
And that's only relative to what I understand because of what I went through before. As soon as I was like, they're the symptoms you'll get down your legs because of those specific nerve irritations. Yeah. So whenever you have the lower leg ones going on, it's generally going to be around that L4, L5, L5S1. It's like the most common place for people to have disc injuries, usually because when people squat to a certain depth, their tail starts to tuck underneath them a little bit. So if someone's doing strength training and squatting all the time, that's the area that's moving under load. So that's where it can get kind of affected. Higher up, you don't want to go too high up because then you can start to get the wee and the poo functions being messed up. We don't want that going on. So very lucky there I'm not going up towards that element. So yeah, lumbar spine, like I said, as soon as I knew it was more nerve irritation, I was able to work. I wasn't scared to move as much anymore. I was like, okay, let's go. And I actually started to do the things that caused intense pain until they stopped causing me the pain as much. So I was able to then work through it with a bit more confidence again. and get it completely under control again, which it is now again. Thankfully, turning in bed, I can now do again. So, yeah, that was the thing. I just didn't want to go back to that stage, and it was my nightmare of I never wanted my kids to see me that way.
Yeah.
And there was one morning I was trying to get down the stairs, and I was one leg at a time, step, having to breathe for a second and take it down. And I'd seen the kids at the bottom of the stairs, and they were whispering to each other, like, "What's wrong with Daddy?" That was horrible to hear. And Shelley, my wife, says, "Leave Daddy alone, he's all right." And she took them off to school. But for them to see me
totally.
like that was horrible. So yeah, just that was just my nightmare from years ago. I was like, I'm not being like this. This is not what I want to show people.
Yeah.
And just as a father, as a person, to feel weak in that way. There's a word that I really hate. Like if you were to say this to someone, you're being really vindictive and nasty. If you're to call someone pathetic, I find that like it cuts to the bone if someone was to say you're pathetic.
Sure.
And that's how I felt. I felt pathetic. I had no strength whatsoever and just useless. Like, what's the point in me? And I just don't like that feeling at all. And I don't want anyone else to have that feeling. And you know yourself, you don't think about anyone else during the day. And if someone says they're having this awful time, you're like, "Oh, poor you, I feel so sorry." And you do feel sorry, but then you go and have your lunch. You don't care.
Totally.
Yeah.
That person's still in it.
All the
They're
time. Like,
constantly in pain, and there's nothing else they can think about. You know what I mean? Like, making a cup of coffee, yeah, I'm in pain. I'm trying to sit down, I'm in pain. If I sit too long, I'm going to be even worse pain. I'm going to get up again. I'm still sore, but I'm not as sore as I will be. And then you take a step funny sideways and you're like, that really hurt.
Yeah.
Why did that hurt? And it's so consuming. It's horrible. So yeah, feel for anyone that's currently in that stage. You can get out of it. So don't think you're stuck like that forever. It will change. So yeah.
Because that's you right in a flare up, like as bad as you really ever get. Combined then with you just got all this information back, and then your head starts to spiral a little bit, and the two combined together create this cocktail of joy that's so fun.
Although what happened to Tom in this instance was the best case scenario from an MRI result. We're talking about your lumbar result here. I know we've got other ones coming later that did not work so well.
They weren't even the problem.
That were never, but the lumbar one, you got your diagnosis, and that was a positive, good. I know what it is, and now I can work on it. Because so often it goes the other way. I've got my diagnosis. Oh no, that's it. Now I need to be careful. So it was really interesting that that's the way it went, and the way that it can so commonly go the other way for most people. Yeah. It's very scary.
So in that sense, do you think like your knowledge and your experience helped you?
Absolutely. Like, no doubt about it, that like it just really cemented how important it is, the stuff that we do to help people. Because as soon as I knew it was nerve irritation, I was like, well, screw you. I'm going to irritate the hell out of you until you stop it. I'm in charge here. And that was my complete approach with it. So it made me from going, this is too sore to move, to going, let's go. Come on, I can take more. Let's go. Come on. I want to move my leg like this. You're not stopping me. And that was the kind of the thought process I was able to then go into with that, because it's like, I'm moving normally. I don't care what's going on inside. I move like a normal person, and you deal with it.
Well, that's the interesting thing about nerves, is that the pain you were feeling was your brain going, something's wrong. Something's wrong. Stop. Something's wrong. But all it is, I mean, it's still a thing that's wrong, is that it's just your disc pushing it. You're not actually damaging your body. It's just being pushed, and your brain is misinterpreting that as something is really wrong with our leg, so stop moving it.
Yeah. The only thing to stop moving is if a limb's not working.
Yes.
So it was still working. Yes, it was incredibly painful, but it was still working. Yeah. If I was looking at it and I couldn't move my leg, even without or with pain, it's the drop foot, stuff like that. Yeah, I need doctor big time. I mean,
overall, we definitely recommend a doctor anyway.
Oh yeah.
Just to say that.
Yeah, this is my story.
Yes.
This is my sharing of a thing. It's not direct advice.
Yes, exactly.
If I was to ask you the same question in 5-10 minutes, Tom, about a different report, did you feel experience and knowledge helped you? Would you say the same answer? Or would you say that it made things worse?
Oh, different with the neck report?
Yes.
It made things much worse.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So,
So interesting.
yeah, because it can be tricky. Like having
Mhm.
knowledge can be both a good thing and a bad thing. In this instance with your back, great.
Yeah.
It was fantastic. It really helped.
I understand backs.
Yeah,
I understand
cool,
the hips.
cool, cool.
I have been through this. I know what's going on.
Yeah.
But yeah, then we got to the neck.
Well, the reason I ask, because oftentimes the advice you get is the more you learn about a subject, the easier it's going to be to deal with it. More recently, I've come to not.
Ignorance is bliss sometimes.
Ignorance is often very blissful.
Because you've hurt your back a good few times. And you've never got an MRI.
Yeah.
And how do you feel about getting
Great.
an MRI?
I never want to get an MRI because that is knowledge that is not on a human level. It's like it's a superhuman level that my brain doesn't need to know that stuff. I feel like all the information is in my body that can send the signals and stuff. Obviously, there's what if you need surgery? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, fine, whatever. But for like most normal cases,
yours has never got you. You've always been able to overcome it within a couple of weeks, rather than you've been wiped out for a year.
Yeah. Anyway, I was popped up in my head this week. I was like, maybe knowledge isn't a good thing sometimes. It's just nice not to know.
The weirdest thing for me was Jenny's one. Like you had intense back pain it was probably about a year, and you got an
it
MRI.
was 6 months and of like really intense, and then the next 6 months, it eased off. But that was an injury as well, like an actual. I know exactly what happened, and I know when it happened. So it was kind of an interesting one because like what I did was I was doing a strongman training session, and in strongman you've got these big logs. So instead of being a barbell where you hold it with both hands pronated, so your palms are down, it's very, very even, very balanced. You've got your hands more in a neutral grip, and you have to like roll this massive, I think it was like a 60-kilo log up. I, however, was used to barbell movements, so I had my hands in the correct place for the log because you couldn't pick it up the other way, but the rest of my body was in Olympic lifting mode.
Yep.
I extended, thrust with the hips and tried to then catch it on my shoulders. That's not how you lift a log. The log crashed onto my shoulders. 60 kilos was about my body weight.
Woof.
And I just sort of bent backwards and just felt like my back smash into each other. I couldn't breathe. Like I it was like a sort of moment. Put the log down and just sort of like slid onto the floor and sat down in the corner and was like kind of like tearing up. Like it was really painful, but I couldn't really speak. The coach, and he was like, I didn't say anything. I did my little gasp, but I didn't then say anything. I didn't make a big noise. I just went and couldn't sit down. But it was also the end of my kind of go, so he didn't know what had happened at all.
Yep.
He was carrying on. He'd been watching someone else. So then when we came to my go again, I was like, I'm done.
Yeah.
And then, like I couldn't really move for a while. Went to a physio. He said, I don't actually want to touch you until you got an MRI, considering the pain that you're in.
Sure.
But yeah, my MRI was fine. Apparently.
Nothing wrong. Jenny has a perfect spine.
Yeah. Yeah.
Classic Jenny.
That amount of pain that I was in, they thought I'd cracked vertebrae or a vertebrae. And there is like kind of like a little mark on one of my vertebrae you could sort of see, but wasn't enough to be considered.
So what you're saying is that the MRI report came back totally fine, and you were just being really dramatic.
That was pathetic.
You were making a scene.
Just making a scene.
Yeah.
So embarrassing.
No, but it's interesting. Yeah, that was, I guess, why you found it interesting was how the pain that I was in.
Totally, yeah.
I had to stop CrossFit. I had to stop everything that I was doing because I just couldn't.
How long before the rowing workshop was that? Because your back was still sore during that.
Yeah, and I was trying to do your rowing program. I think it was like soon after I'd just gotten back into it.
Yeah.
So doing that much flexion was way too much. Yeah. But yeah, there's nothing wrong with my spine.
Great.
Kind of weird.
Good place to be.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it is quite a small spine.
Hey.
It's because you're so bendy. You could have just folded yourself in half.
I
You would
could
have
have,
been fine.
yeah.
Jenny only has like 6 vertebrae.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think
They used to be much bigger.
I like to think of it as your brain going, "Don't you ever lift that log again?"
Yeah.
So I'm not ever letting you forget this for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
So-
Oh, yeah, because I can still feel it. Like, that feeling of when it hit me, I'm like, oh, no.
Mhm.
Yeah. So, we've been delaying it for a while
Oh,
now.
yes. Where the
Because-
meltdown came from, because
Yeah.
they're reading the hips, and I was like,
Actually,
nothing really
yeah,
wrong.
If that was the only thing that you got, it's almost not worthy of a
We
podcast.
wouldn't even made a
Yeah,
podcast
because
there. Yeah.
like whoop-de-doo,
Yeah.
Tom's fine.
Tom's
Great.
got disc injuries. La,
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 la.
la.
Yeah, you told us already.
Yeah,
Okay.
his spine is degenerative. Whose is it?
But no,
Mine.
Tom
Mine
wanted to
isn't.
get everything scanned.
Yeah.
Yeah, Tom. So we'll cover the shoulder quickly because it was a funny one as well. Because the shoulder, my right shoulder that I injured really bad years ago, like couldn't lift it above a certain height, and still to this day, if I'm doing the likes of handstand push-ups, if I don't brace properly, I'll feel quite a sharp pain in my shoulder.
Oh.
So as long as I do the technique fine, it doesn't bother me in the slightest. So it's just I always find it quite interesting. But apart from that, it never gives me any problems. I can do shoulder day every day. But it still shows there's mild degenerate change in the SC joint, and there's probable early impingement of the supraspinatus. So I found that quite interesting because I thought there was going to show more. I was actually hoping for more in a weird way. I was
Yeah.
going with these MRIs going, oh, I hope there's loads of stuff wrong with me so I can say to people, I've got that
Totally.
too, and help them to, encourage them to keep doing stuff.
Yep.
But yeah, the neck.
So, why did you choose to get your neck done? Of all things, what was the reason behind that?
There was,
Do you have any issues?
I don't have any issues now
No.
at all. No.
Sorry, sorry.
No.
This is the Belfast coming out in me.
No.
No issues.
No
I've
issues.
no
No
No,
neck issues.
None of those?
No issues.
None of the other stuff?
None of the other- Sorry.
You too.
I know we're getting to the emotional bit, so we're compensating here.
Yeah. So yeah, I never have any issues with my shoulders whatsoever. I could do shoulder day every day. I never tweak my neck. Years ago, so that 8-9 years ago, I used to tweak my neck very frequently. And there was those occasions where I fell on my neck really badly. Like I was trying to do a backflip on a trampoline, and I completely chickened out as I turned one way. I landed on my neck and kneed myself in the head
Oh no.
at the same time. Like, and I could not
dear,
move.
Tom.
If I lay down, I thought my neck was broken. I couldn't again
Yeah.
turn because of my head. Like heads are heavy. They are
Yeah, they
actually
are.
really
They
heavy when the
are,
muscles don't want to
yeah.
work.
Super hard.
So yeah, there was another time I was lifting overhead, felt this massive almighty crack and thought, I broke my neck. I have definitely broken my neck. My neck is broken. I am paralyzed. And I was able to move my limbs, so I was like, maybe not, but this is really sore. So, and there's another, like any time I would have hurt my neck, I wouldn't have been able to turn my head for a couple of weeks. Like it was
Sure.
weeks of really bad pain and physio appointments to get traps, trying to relax and everything like that. So after I did all the shoulder mobility stuff and like all the dumbbell shoulder rotations and dislocates and all that kind of stuff, fixed my shoulders.
You know.
Shoulders are great.
All the things we tell
Yeah.
people to do.
All the
you
stuff
know.
we tell people to do.
Yeah.
I was like, shoulders never have a problem with them whatsoever. If I sit for a long period of time with my shoulders sort of rounded forwards, I like say I'm on my phone or something for a long period of time, I get a bit of pins and needles in my thumb, my left thumb. If I sit up straight again, it goes away immediately. So that was the height of any kind
So
of
there,
symptoms.
really,
I
there
had.
was nothing wrong with you. You were just literally getting this out of curiosity.
Yeah, pure curiosity. Because I have like, if I turn my head a certain way and tilt it and move in a certain way, there's a wee, that happens, every time it moves a certain way.
Which
So I'm
again
like,
is something that a
Yeah.
lot of people would have, a
yeah.
crack or a click.
click.
Yeah.
My knee feels like there's a tendon just like slides off, slides on, slides off, slides on. I don't want to know what it is.
So given that as the premise, nothing wrong, no symptoms to write home about. What was it that your neck MRI said?
Wow.
And then we'll have some explanation as to what it means as well.
There is a degeneration of the upper 4 cervical discs. There's a loss of cervical lordosis. There's evidence of early posterior osteophytes at C3, C4, C4, C5, and C5, C6. So extra bony growth. So that would give you that sound. If you
Yeah.
ever hear in your neck, it almost, if you turn your head, you hear a... It
Right.
could be something like that going on. There's a small syrinx in the cervical cord at C6, C7 that measures 3 centimeters.
So let's just highlight, that's the scary one. Do you have anything else after that?
There's
yeah.
There's
So
C3,
we'll come
C4.
back to that.
There's mild narrowing of the right foramen without nerve impingement. So that's basically, you've like wee holes in the bones where nerves pass through. And if that starts to narrow, it's as if the nerves can be touched from there. So that can progress over time, but it's not something really to worry about. So like anytime you see the word mild on an MRI report, basically go great and don't even care about it. If it says mild,
Yeah,
probably totally
that's
fine. C4, C5, there's no significant nerve impingement. Yes, I have one that's okay.
Yay! No nerve impingement.
C5, C6, there is bulging of the annulus with small left posterolateral protrusion, which effaces the anterior epidural fat. There is stenosis, so that's closing of the bone, like extra bone, of the left foramen by osteophytes, and there is nerve impingement of the C6 nerve root. So that would explain that kind of feeling I get in my thumb, which is, again, never a problem. C6, C7, there's mild narrowing of the left foramen with potential for early incipient impingement of the left C7 nerve root. And at C7, T1, there's no nerve impingement.
Yay!
Yay!
That's a lot of observation. Oh, there's more?
No. Well, there's a big conclusion stuff too as well.
Just how you
I'm literally, there's so much stuff. I'm not reading some of the stuff because there's just so much stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the one that absolutely freaked me out was the small syrinx in the cervical cord. So that is a cyst that's inside my spinal cord that I didn't even know was there. And I...
Cyst?
Okay,
cool.
Inside,
yeah.
3 centimeters.
Sometimes spelt with a Z, you know.
Oh!
A cyst. Cyst.
So yeah, I've worked with people that would have like... This is how weird the body is. There's people that have tumours that just grow. They're not cancers or anything. They just grow. Just tumours in their spine.
I have one on my knee.
Yeah, in your knee. So yeah, that can just that can start to grow and expand.
Sure.
And basically, when it's in your spinal cord, anything below that, if it gets big enough, will just poof off. That's it. You can't stretch that out. It's off. So that freaked me out. Not knowing that was there, not knowing how long it's been there, has
you
it got bigger?
So well, Tom.
So well.
He probably took it as well as any of us would take it, to be fair.
Totally.
But yeah,
This is where it comes back to the knowing too much.
Yes.
Because I have worked with people with that in them. They've had to get surgeries. They have had to. They didn't have a choice because it progressed over time. It grew to the point where it was cutting stuff off.
So the surgery, what it would do, because it's a cyst filled with fluid, and that's why it expands, because there's fluid in it. So the surgery would just drain the fluid, wouldn't it?
No, they have to put a shunt in your body.
Okay.
So they have to put something basically to make it so that
there's enough space.
Fluid can go through the thing. And that has to be there, and you would have to get it like replaced every 10 or 15 years and stuff as well. Wow. So it's
multiple
not just
surgeries.
Yeah, you're not just looking at one surgery ever. You're looking at like multiple
a lifetime
things.
of surgeries.
But for some people as well, a syrinx might not ever grow even more. So it could have been from one of the times I fell on my head or whatever, and it was just that stuff that slipped down. There's even your brain and your skull can be like developed in such a way that stuff just goes and goes down your spinal cord. Like, come on, God, whoever makes us, you know what I mean? What design is this?
Yeah.
So it's kind of weird to think about that one. So yeah, that I had no problems whatsoever with my neck. None, not a one. And as soon as I read that and found that out, I was like, huh, that's crazy. That's what I wanted. I wanted stuff wrong with me so I could identify with other people with neck problems and say it's not a problem. I've got a problem.
Jenny, I can't hold my phone.
I started freaking out about this thing. I started to feel as if there was a worm on the back of my neck. I started to imagine I could feel the cyst inside my spinal cord.
Yeah.
And I started to convince myself that my arms felt weird.
Sure. Yeah.
And then you start to go, what do your arms normally feel like?
Yeah. What is normal? Yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Do you feel your arms? Does anyone feel their arms? Am I not feeling my arms? And I started to get muscle contractions in my arms and started to go in this cycle of like, I'm going to just not be able to walk. I'm going to be in that chair that Christopher Reeve was in, the Superman, when he broke his neck. That's what's going to happen to me. I'm going to just shut down, and I can't stretch that. I can't change this. I have no control over this. And I ran into the living room and says to Shelley, we have to go out. We have to go right now. We're going to the toy shop. We're doing the Christmas shopping. We're going right now. I can't sit still. We have to go out. We have to go out right now. And she's like, okay.
Yeah, because this was just before Christmas.
It's just before Christmas this happened, And we went to the toy shop and we're trying to get the kids to look at toys to pick for whatever they want to pick up. And I was like, yep, that looks nice, honey. Yeah, I'll take a picture of that and make sure that we get that. And I just start having panic attacks in the place and freaking out, like not able to process this information because, like I said, I just imagine about how things can progress and stuff. And it was awful. And then we were trying to train in the gym like the week after, and I was like doing exercises and stuff, and it was the single arm lat pull downs,
Yes.
and I was like feeling my lats, but on the way back up on the eccentric of the movement, the negative part of the movement, when you're bringing your arm back up straight again, my arm was shaking like anybody's does.
Yes.
Like, this is what happens when you train. Like, it was doing what it normally does and has done for years. And it, like I say, it's a normal feeling. But my brain then started kicking in again. And I'm like, is this me losing function? Am I not able...
This is it. This is the last time I'll ever do a lap pull down. This is
exactly.
My muscles are shaking with a heavy weight. That's not normal.
Such a coincidence that your body shuts down the week after an MRI was done, isn't it?
Yeah. And yeah, we were...
Maybe the X-rays or whatever it is triggered it. Maybe they turned it on. Maybe it's all shut down.
Yeah, this is it.
Yeah,
there was nothing there the week before, and then it's progressed to 3 centimeters within a minute, and that's it's probably 100 centimeters right now.
At least. And of course, as Tom said, 3 centimeters. He said visually, 3 centimeters is at least 15 centimeters. By the way, everybody.
Oh, yeah. It's a guy 3 centimeters. Okay.
Yeah. So me and Jenny had our meeting. It was that Tuesday. We always train before we do our meetings, and we were coming back, and I started crying in the car. I was like, "This changes everything. I'm not going to be able to look after my family. This is all going to happen. I'm going to lose my house. Just catastrophizing everything." And I did have to go to the doctor and get something for anxiety. So they give me amitriptyline, I think it is, and I took that for a few weeks to get me out of that cycle, because I could feel my brain spiraling, and I couldn't stop it. I couldn't rationally think, and that was the most frustrating thing, because there's Tom Morrison, coach, standing there going, "You're being irrational," and there's Tom in there going, "No, I'm not." You don't know what you're talking about.
You're being irrational.
Let me tell you something.
There's a 20-foot cyst in my spine.
20 foot. How did I fit it in?
Well,
it's like 16 miles of
intestines.
Yeah.
But what you went through, I mean, that was horrible, and it was horrible. It was hard to watch because we were helpless as well. But we knew that you were.
Because I'd message and I'd be like, "No, fine, it's all good. Don't want to talk about it. Moving on."
Yeah, sure.
Cool.
But so, despite it being horrible, that was actually a much more common reaction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So how relaxed and how relieved you were after your lumbar MRI, that is not the norm. Yeah. As mentioned before, you took that in the best possible way. Diagnosis, great, now we can work on it. Whereas you see time and time again, people have an MRI that to you, you'd be like, "Oh, good. Yeah, no, that's great. It's only mild. You've got pretty common symptoms. That's great." And act the same way that you felt when you had a syrinx in your neck.
Or syrinx, yeah.
Syrinx, yeah. Anyway.
A zenith.
So a zenith. A zist. So in some ways, it was a terrible experience to go through, but it's also very, you felt a lot more sympathy then. Mm-hmm. Not that you didn't before, but a lot more sympathy for people who are like, I'm freaking out because this is what it says. And you're like, "Oh, trust me, I know."
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know.
Which is nice. Like I do, like, going through that a couple of months ago helped a lot again, because I hadn't had such bad problems for so many years again. You almost start to, not you forget, but you forget how bad it was. Like, you're like, "Oh, it was awful," but in the moment, it's horrific. Like, it really is.
Your brain has such a good way of just like diminishing hard times.
Well, that's why people have more than one child.
Yeah, no, legitimately.
That's why it's there. Yeah. For sure.
So what happened, Tom? What was it that you think got you through it? And now we're talking about it. You wouldn't have been able to talk about it even a month or so ago.
Yeah, I'm still pretty caught up about it. It was like, okay, what can I control again? And so I play guitar, I practice juggling, and, always work on neurological stuff, balance stuff and things like that. So I was like, right, what can I do here that I have a checklist to know that I'm okay?
Yeah.
So as long as I play my guitar regularly and I work on the juggling regularly and I know how things feel, it's like, I know I'm symptom free.
Yep.
And my physio actually said to me, it's like, you, in a weird dumb luck, did like the smartest thing ever. because it's the syrinx, however it's pronounced,
Oh.
does need monitored. So every year or every 6 months, you should get a repeat MRI to
Yeah.
see if it has progressed.
Oh, good.
Yeah. So for me, accidentally getting that and finding that there, it could potentially mean that
Yeah.
maybe in 5 years' time, if my
Sure.
left arm stopped working or something, I'd be like, "What's going on?" And then you'd be going through a rigmarole
back
of
it.
like getting all
What's
these checks
happening?
and
Get your
stuff.
brain scanned. Yeah.
Yeah, before you know, you might be waiting 6 months before you finally get the MRI to go, "Oh, it's the syrinx."
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
so now I already know it's there preventatively. So that's like any weird symptom, immediately I'm able to go to the doctor. I have this here at this area, sort of.
Yeah.
Stick the shunt in, whatever. So yeah, it's good for me to know. But yeah, so now I set these boundaries up so that I'm like, I know how my body feels and how it works. So I know what feels normal to me. So as long as I keep that stuff up, I'm happy enough. And it's encouraged me to start doing more band work and stuff at home. So
Yeah.
I every morning when I get up now, I'm doing band dislocates again and
Yep.
you know, doing neck exercises and things like that, just to keep flossing the nerves essentially, to keep
Yeah.
things feeling normal. So yeah, that's how I've kind of reconciled with it. It's like I know I feel okay, but it took me having that absolute meltdown, and it did take me taking the tablets to calm my brain down to get it to a level of like not caring almost in this
Yeah,
weird way.
yeah.
So I've
Sure.
stopped taking them now, and again I'm totally fine again. It was just being able to get through that of just I'm a warrior, an absolute warrior.
Oh,
And I
yeah,
think
he
for
is.
a lot of people, you know, and that's why a pain as well is such a perceptive thing. So some people that are like, that's a bit sore. Oh, well, don't care. I'll play my PlayStation until it feels better. There's people like that. But then there's other people out there that's like, that's a bit sore. Probably cancer. Probably going to fall off.
Is it more
Yeah,
sore
and
now
you
than it was a second ago? I think it's more sore. Do you think it's more sore?
Yeah.
I think it's sore.
Yeah.
I poked it and now it's more sore. You poked it really hard. I know, but now it's more sore.
And you're just like, no, there's a bruise. There's a bruise.
I'm bleeding internally.
I keep scratching at it. It's just getting worse.
Yeah, so I'm that guy. So yeah, and it was just by putting those things up. Just like, look, I know I'm okay, and I feel fine again. And yeah, doing shoulders all the time again, skipping leg day every day. Great,
Except
love
for
it.
today.
Except for today, you didn't
Yeah.
really do legs today.
Yeah, we didn't.
There's
really
no
do
like
legs.
one thing. Then it's just a combination of. There's sort of similar to grieving. The grieving process, you just have to go through it. You can't rush it. You need to turn to sort of a level of acceptance. You need to sort of reconcile your thoughts on it, and then like take action and do things. But you can't skip a step really, and you couldn't just start straight into action and do it because your brain was too busy
No.
doing something else.
Yeah.
So there is that process of having to just kind of work through the different
The
stages.
time, yeah. And like that's really tricky because we know there'll be people in our audience and maybe listening to the podcast who are going through a similar experience right now. But the only advice you can give then is it will pass. And
Yeah.
it's such a cliche and
Totally.
it's not helpful.
Yeah,
like-
and if somebody says, I have such and such, and we're like,
Oh.
here's what you need to do to fix it.
You're not ready to do it.
Provided
Yeah.
you've already gone through the,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah, you need to be ready to fix it.
Yeah.
And the actions that Tom wanted to take initially, or thought you needed to take, were very different to when a month later you go, oh, I'll just do a bit of juggling. like the amount of stuff you were probably thinking you needed to do because it was so raw and so like big in your brain. Yeah, so there is really no other advice other than you will get through it, but also you have to get through it. Don't let yourself stay in it because otherwise you could very easily have stayed in that place and gone in cycles and spirals and maybe all of the worst case scenarios that you thought of would happen because you stayed in that terrible place. So even though it will pass, you need to also work towards little tiny nudges, little tiny, okay, right, what is it like today? What are we thinking? That sort of way.
Yeah, and any flare up that you get is an opportunity to learn more about the thing and get it more under control. So always take pain flare ups if you get them on and off. If you have disc injuries and you've had them for many years and you're getting the weird symptoms and stuff, always take it as an opportunity to stand outside yourself and be like, right, what have I done recently? What have I changed? So I think the reason that my hip played up so much is because last year I moved house and I didn't like my previous house, so I would have walked a lot, like just to not be in it. So I was doing like easily 10,000 steps every day just to get out of the house.
And you
And
were
then-
you were pretty consistent with your training as well. Like,
yeah,
you were just
before
doing stuff
before
all
we
the time.
moved, yeah, I was really getting into my training and stuff as well. Felt best I've felt in years, and moved house and was like, I like this house. I
I'm
like
happy
sitting
now,
in
yeah.
this chair.
Yeah.
This is a great chair. So my steps from daily went from like 10,000 to like 200.
and your gym has been like done up.
Yeah, gym has
So
been done up, so stop training lifting.
no steps and no lunges and all that kind of like workout stuff you were
preventative
doing.
stuff, yeah.
And what is the thing that I always say to people when you get flare-ups? When you stop training. And I was like, I basically stopped training,
Yeah.
and that's what triggered the whole thing coming on. So I've always noticed that for years, that if I'm not keeping the muscles active, that's when I can start to get the tingling and the pain coming back in and stuff. So yeah, always moving, always keep moving, always keep wiggling.
Do you think so? Sort of closing thoughts, giving advice to people. Would you give different advice to people if they know that they are a worrier versus a rational person, or would you generally, you know,
A
what I mean?
warrior versus a normal person.
Yeah, somebody who's not the same. You know what I mean?
I'm eccentric,
yeah.
alright?
I'm fabulous.
Would you recommend different things or the same thing? Like,
It's one of those weird coaching things. It's like almost giving too many cues to someone when they're trying to learn something.
totally.
It's like if someone doesn't have too much information and they kind of say to me, like, if you want to have an in-depth conversation, absolutely, I will. And a warrior, it'll be like, look, I've been through this, and you're going to be thinking all of the worst things, and it is completely justified.
Yeah.
And you need to work through it, and you need to do the right movements and stuff. But yeah, if someone doesn't really know much and they don't really care about knowing too much, the less information kind of the better. If I can almost like not dismissively, but almost like brush over and be like, oh yeah, I've seen that loads of times before, don't worry, all you need to do is this, rather than getting into it's like, oh, you know, when you're ready, that might, you know, go even worse. You know, as you grow, the extra bone growth will happen, the loss of the disc space will push things out even further and stuff like that. I don't need to get into that with someone. So yeah, the less kind of, you know, in a way, can be helpful. So yeah, it really depends person to person. If I'm talking to someone that I notice is really, really needing help, and like even to talk through the things that they're thinking, because sometimes, like I do this with Jenny all the time, I will verbalize the ridiculous thoughts I'm having for her to go, like, basically not even say something. Sometimes I'm like, yeah, I heard myself. Yeah, that is ridiculous.
Yeah.
So we
You
call
know,
that
so-
rubber ducking.
Yeah,
We
remember
do.
that?
Yeah.
So yeah, verbalizing it sometimes can be really, really helpful, and it just depends person to person. The same, you know yourself with coaching. There's some people you'll be like, come on, get up, you can do it, get up. Ah! And then there'll be other people going, are you all right? You sure you're all right? Yeah, come on, let's go. You can do this. You know, you talk to everybody differently. So yeah.
I think that I really like that idea of speaking to somebody who's relatively knowledgeable, provided they're like going to be helpful. Because just by you going through that process of verbalizing what's in your head and you hearing it back and going, oh, that's insane. Because you talk to your friends differently than you talk to yourself.
You're the worst person to talk to.
You won't tell your friends like you're not worth helping, like, you know, all the worst things in the world. Like, you're going to be generous to them, you're going to be helpful and like supportive, and then you hear that language that comes out of your mouth and you're like, I'm not really doing that to myself, am I? Like, you want to try and be your best friend. So that's where like a coach or somebody who's been through it like yourself, who can just go like, we're here for you, like, let me hear your thoughts, let me hear them, and then you're like, feeling good now, sweet.
That's why it's so important to share this stuff. So like for anyone that has been through it and came out the other side, keep telling absolutely everybody that you can. Like, I want it to be the norm that if you have something, that you fix it yourself, you get on it and you know what to do and have that physical freedom essentially. So yeah, and that's, talking to people is so hard sometimes. Like the funniest thing, we'll finish closing note. Whenever I went to the dentist, whenever I had the resorption in my front tooth, resorption is basically cancer in the tooth, so it was just dying inside my face, so the tooth had to be removed. My dentist was basically like, oh, you've got resorption, and I'm like, what's that? And he said, oh, it's basically like a cancer in your tooth, you need to get your front tooth removed. And I'm like, beg your pardon? And I was like, and he's like, yeah, we can get you sorted out with that. And he, like, just so
Matter
no
of fact.
empathy whatsoever. Yeah, just matter of fact, just like, you know, here's how it is. And I was like, I need to sit down, my front tooth. And he just there's no empathy in him whatsoever. I changed dentists because I was like, you're not the person for me. So it's something to think about as well. If the support network you have if you aren't gelling with them, it's not
Totally.
necessarily their fault.
Nope.
Like that blunt dentist could be great for anybody
Yep.
else, but not me. There is other people that you might gel with better, so it is really important to get
Totally.
different opinions from people.
If you've got any kind of issues, back, spine, all that kind of stuff, we have a ton of resources from Tom's experience on our website, blogs.
Yep, blogs on Tom's MRIs and disc herniations in general.
We'll have to do an updated one now because the old ones are out of date because it only says I have two
only
disc injuries.
50% of your actual.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, check it out, tommorrison.uk.
Yep.
And otherwise, see you next time.
Yeah. Good.
Boom.